Let's get straight into this one. George Russell will be the happiest for pre-practice 1. He finished P1, 3 tenths ahead of Felipe Drugovich. Felipe Drugovich was only 3 tenths ahead of his teammate Lance Stroll, a huge margin for the 2023 reserve driver. Felipe Drugovich will be hoping that this drive in practice 1 has shown Aston Martin what he can do ahead of future years. Daniel Ricciardo put his AlphaTauri in P3, only 3.5 tenths slower than George Russell. Valtteri Bottas put his Alfa Romeo into P4, 3.8 tenths behind George Russell. Lance Stroll was P5, 5.5 tenths behind George Russell and 3 tenths behind his rookie teammate Felipe Drugovich. Oscar Piastri found himself in P6, 6 tenths off George Russell in P1. There wasn't much to separate Carlos Sainz and his rookie teammate Robert Schwartzman in this session. Both were between 6 and 6.5 tenths behind George Russell. Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda closely follow the Ferrari pairing, being just under or just over 6.5 tenths behind George Russell. Early observations from FP1 is that Mercedes seem to have some quite decent pace around here, finding themselves 4 tenths ahead of the closest senior driver in Daniel Ricciardo. George Russell found himself 6 tenths ahead of Carlos Sainz. That is an important detail to acknowledge coming into the championship battle that occurs this weekend. Ferrari are just 4 points behind and will be hoping to get ahead and stay ahead of Mercedes in the race this weekend. Lance Stroll will be looking over his shoulder, and maybe Lawrence Stroll will too, as Felipe Drugovich has shown what he is capable of in a Formula 1 car. He beat Lance Stroll by a considerable margin and he was the leading rookie in the field. Felipe Drugovich put around 3.5 tenths on the head of the next quickest rookie, which was Robert Schwartzman in the Ferrari. Logan Sargent is to be investigated in between FP1 and FP2 as a result of some driving erratically. Logan Sargent was driving slowly on the racing line and received a late call about Jack Doohan coming through on a fast lap. In turn, he turned himself into the pit lane, nearly wiping himself and Jack Doohan out at the final corner. Frederick Vesti finds himself in P12, 7.5 tenths off teammate George Russell. Jack Doohan finds himself in P13. He is only 1.5 tenths ahead of his senior teammate Pierre Gasly. F2 champion-elect Théo Pourchaire found himself in P14, a mere 7 tenths off Valtteri Bottas. IndyCar star Pato O'Ward put his McLaren into P15, 0.5 tenths behind Oscar Piastri. There wasn't much to separate the two Red Bull drivers. Jake Dennis finished ahead of Isaac Hadjar by around 0.5 tenths. Interesting to note that Red Bull also had rookie engineers guiding the drivers this weekend, as GP was spotted on the pit wall with Max Verstappen. Formula 3 star Zach O'Sullivan found himself 6 tenths behind Logan Sargent, however he finished P18. Oliver Behrman will be happy with his session as he finished 1.5 tenths behind Kevin Magnussen, however the Haas drivers respectively finished 19th and 20th. Fred Vasseur won't be happy with Carlos Sainz. He put his car into the barrier early into free practice 2. Carlos Sainz ran in free practice 1 and was unable to show what he is capable of, only being 0.5 tenths ahead of Robert Schwartzman. Carlos Sainz ruined the left-hand side of his car, a big hole in the side pod, rear suspension damage and obviously tyre damage. The front wing was finished, so he will have a big repair job this evening. The engineers and the mechanics and even Fred Vasseur are all going to be disappointed with Carlos Sainz. As a result of the last 2 weekends, Ferrari may or may not be heading into cost cap trouble. We will only find out maybe in October next year, who knows with the FIA. As a result of this crash, it led to a lengthy red flag period to get rid of the car and to fix the barriers. This took around 25 minutes before Carlos Sainz's car was moved, the barriers were repaired and the green flag started waving again. As drivers and teams were rushing to make sure they could still fulfill their programme in the half an hour left, it led to some drivers going on to push laps with unfully prepared cars. This led to Nico Hülkenberg having a smash at turn 1. Nico Hülkenberg went into turn 1 a bit hot. He touched the artificial grass on the exit, which spun him round and hit him into the pit exit barrier. Fortunately, Nico was okay and there wasn't a great deal of damage. The rear wing may need fixing and there may be a little bit of floor damage, but that is something that Haas will be able to handle. Unfortunately for them, they miss out on the run-in for the rest of the session. This red flag wasn't as lengthy as the previous one with Carlos Sainz. This red flag lasted for about 10 minutes while they removed the car and put it onto the escape road. Upon green flags, there was a battle between Max Verstappen, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen overtaking on the pit exit. This is allowed these days, unfortunately, but I don't agree with it. You shouldn't be allowed to overtake within the pits, and you shouldn't be allowed to overtake, especially on pit exit of a dangerous pit exit like Abu Dhabi. The practice session finished with the top three of Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, and then Max Verstappen. They were all within 0.2 of each other, and that is something that I hope will stick together for the qualifying session tomorrow afternoon. If they can keep the grid with this tight for the qualifying session, it's going to be very interesting, and we may see some big names out early on in qualifying. Max Verstappen might not get pole, and Charles Leclerc might again put his Ferrari on the top row. Lewis Hamilton seemed to struggle in practice 2, often going wide in turn 6 onto turn 7. That cost him a lot of time. As a result of this, he does have a lot of time to find tomorrow, but he finds himself 0.2 behind George Russell, his teammate. Earlier on in the day, it was reported by Autosport and Formula One and McLaren that McLaren have extended their power unit deal with Mercedes. This is a show of faith, with Toto Wolff and his power unit department had been searching around Red Bull powertrains and Honda to see which power unit would be best for them. They've decided to stick with Mercedes for the 2026 regulations up until 2030. Mercedes fans can see this as a positive, as McLaren will have a lot more information than we do on the 2026 engines. Over this weekend, there's been a spat between Christian Horner and Lewis Hamilton. Christian Horner claims that Lewis Hamilton's team reached out over a drive at Red Bull for next season. Lewis Hamilton denies these claims. Christian Horner claims it was Lewis Hamilton's dad who asked about the drive, but Lewis Hamilton denies any part in this rumour. It's worth noting that within this free practice 1 session, the field was spread by 1.5 seconds. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.